All right, back from lunch. It has really impressed me throughout this whole weekend, the regional spread we've managed to pull to this conference, and just the wealth of experience and expertise and passion amongst our international delegates in terms of what they have been managed to do in their jurisdiction, and it's really been great, hearing what you have to say. And we're privileged to have some of them on the panel now to share with us, what is the personal cost of being a litigator and litigants as well in this area, and it's quite sensitive area often. And I'll pass on to Lisa now, who will introduce the panel and who will start the conversation going.
Thank you, Lynette. And before we do move into the panel proper, on the back of these, one of the two breakout sessions before lunch, which was on strategic litigation, Sarang Lee is here to talk about the experience specifically in South Korea. There are some really innovative and groundbreaking practices that they have managed to achieve, and she's going to spend a few minutes talking about her in-country experience. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sarang Lee from South Korea. I work with the Truth Foundation, and actually my flight is in 3 hours. I will leave after I finish my what I want to share with you. So I can tell you the Truth Foundation is like the fruitful result of all kinds of strategic litigation happen, because the founders of the Truth Foundation are the torture victims and the lawyers and the medical group, including the specialist in torture and pain and trauma and psychiatrists, and also human rights activists. In 1970s and 80s, during the dictatorship, torture was used to make the victims say the first conviction that they are North Korean spies, when they are not North Korean spies. They were just ordinary fishermen, farmers, sometimes just office workers, and they had a slight link to North Korea. And in order to have some control over the public, the government, including the army, the police, and the intelligence staff, they used torture they tortured people to make the first conviction. And the victims served the jail time from few months to the longest time was 23, 25 years. And a lot of them got out of the jail during the first democratic president was elected in 1990s. And when they got out of jail in 1990s, they wanted to prove their innocence, which was to start the retrial process at court. So they brought the case to the human rights NGOs first, because at that time the lawyers were kind of reluctant to start the retrial, and also the retrial is very tricky process legally in Korea, and I believe it's the same in other countries as well. So when the torture victims brought the case to the human rights activists, they tried to find the lawyers who were interested in the retrial. In the process of doing so, we opened up a lot of creative campaigns, like for example, the torture victims had, all of them was charged of the violation of national security law. So what we did was we kind of made a public campaign in the public square in the center of Seoul, like the funeral of the National Security Act, or the public hearing, and the torture victims sharing their personal experiences. For example, like testimonial therapy sessions was open to the public, of course, with the consent of the torture victims. We successfully opened up the retrial cases with the torture victims, and afterwards we won the case and proved the innocence of the torture victims, and it continued to the criminal reparation and civil compensation. And with the compensation money they received, they wanted to do the same thing to the torture victims in Korea and other countries. That's why the torture victims were the torture victims agreed to make established the Truth Foundation. So that's how we were established. And afterwards, the litigation continued because when the president was elected a few years ago, you probably know her because we were very famous 2 years ago about Candlelight Virgil to kind of make that president go away because she was the daughter of the dictator in 70s and 80s. When she was in her presidency, what she did was she controlled the court and the judges, and they shortened the statute of limitations to, it was 3 years in the past, but they changed it to 6 months. And when the statute of limitations was changed without any reason, a lot of the cases regarding the civil compensation, they started to lose at the Supreme Court, so the victims had to pay back the compensation money with a legal interest, which was like 5% a month, or it was a very big amount. And we brought the case to the Constitutional Court, and it was pending for a few years, but this year we got the successful result from the Constitutional Court that decision of the court to make the statute of limitation shortened was unconstitutional. So what we are trying to do now is to open up the case of the civil compensation at the civil court. So to sum up, the case of torture happened somewhere in 1980s, sometimes 1970s, but they went through the jail time severely for a few decades, and afterwards they went through the retrial process, and then criminal reparation, civil compensation, and they went through the Constitutional Court decision, and now they are going back to civil compensation as a retrial process. So it's still going. In 2018, after 30 years after the torture happened, the legal litigation is still going. So I think that kind of gave you a lot of idea, because we were talking about the strategic litigation over the 4 days of the meetings. I just wanted to share the case of Truth Foundation with you. Thank you. And we do have the report that we submitted to the Human Rights Committee about the statute of limitations case. So I would love to share with you if you are interested in. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarang, and happy travels. So I will introduce my panelists. You will see on the agenda that the moderator is listed as our friend Marsha, who is here in the room, but her background and expertise is in Central Asia, and she and I have collaborated on this panel, and she will continue to provide input into the discussion, but in terms of a local focus, this is something that I can do, so this is my chance to be able to talk with our friends that have come here from various countries in the region and have a very localised discussion that hopefully is relevant for everyone. I will be talking to the panellists and asking questions, but if there are comments or questions that you would like to make as we go through, just indicate to me that you'd like to make a contribution, and we'll have this as open as possible. So to my left is, you'll see that Phnom Penh has a name in Thailand that is not unique, but for some of us it is a little longer than what we're used to. We call her Mary, this is a nickname, and she operates largely, or a lot of her experience is from the south of Thailand, and all of you will be familiar with the insurgency there, and this is a conflict that has gone on for many, many years. There are separatists, of course, that are trying to have an independent state from Thailand and don't at all identify with the rest of the country, and there's a lot of people that have died. It is a very significant conflict that isn't in the news every day, but people like Mary deal with the survivors and the perpetrators, as we will talk about in her everyday working life. So she has some very valuable experiences to share. Gilbert is associate director at a legal firm in the Philippines named Centro Law, and he has direct experience of representing the families of clients that are the victims of state-induced torture or killings. And he, again, will have some very interesting insights, particularly given the directive of the President in the last couple of years that has led to a number of extrajudicial killings. And so we're very interested in his insights into this. And Eric in Malaysia, you may have heard, he is an attorney as well, and he himself has been detained without charge, and so he has a very personal experience of being a victim of having your liberty deprived without due process and certainly without cause. So I will commence, leading on from So-Young's very eloquent description of her work in South Korea. One of the things that she mentioned was the statute of limitation, really without notice, was truncated down to 6 months, which limited the action with which something could be brought. And what we will be talking about today are the impacts on practitioners in this area, and what So-Young touched on is one of the impacts are things out of our control. So it might be the state that changes access to legal process, or it might be even the media. But there are a lot of interactions in this work that are sometimes very difficult to predict, and mean that you have to pivot and change your strategy or sometimes your profession as a result. So the first question to the panel is about the practical obstacles of working in human rights. And for example, if you are a commercial specialist, a commercial litigator, your clients tend to have somewhere to live. They tend to be pecuniary, they can pay bills, and in human rights work often the clients don't have money to pay you for your services, they may not know who you are, and they may have difficulties even accessing you, and certainly may not be as well informed as, say, a commercial firm, for example. So one of my first questions is, how do you act for or act with destitute clients where they may be homeless or in hiding, and they have some very fundamental needs that are perhaps getting in the way of being able to allow them to work with you on their case as fully as possible. So perhaps Gilbert, if you can kick us off.
I'm also a law partner in a law firm, so we also receive paying clients, such as corporations. So if I'm going to compare and contrast, in fact, it's more difficult to handle a human rights case. Aside from the fact that you don't get paid, you're a pro bono lawyer, you also have a very difficult case, especially if it's a human rights case. Why? Because first, your clients are actually threatened by state agents. So there might be a need to also relocate them to a safe house that you or other NGOs might need to provide. And it happened in our constitutional challenge against the war on drugs. There at some point we have, or some of our lawyers have to provide safe house for some of our clients. Number two is there's also a difficulty in terms of the evidence that you need to present. In fact, I had this torture case, which is still ongoing, wherein the victim eventually died, and there's no body of the victim. And in Philippine rules on evidence, if you don't have the body, you cannot prove the death. So you cannot prove torture resulting to death. So it's quite a challenge. How can you show that there's even death? So we have to show through circumstantial pieces of evidence. And one evidence that we have of the torture was this video clip that was taken, except that in our rules on evidence, you need someone who will authenticate that video, or else it's inadmissible in court. So who will actually authenticate it? No one wants to authenticate it. Even if the journalist who knew about it, who was the source of it, actually knew who was the ultimate source, he won't also share it. In fact, we tried to ask that. Well, of course, there's also the shield law for journalists, and we respect that in accordance with the right to freedom of expression. So what we did was we actually presented an expert witness who actually did a digital forensic examination just to show that this video was not spliced It's not animated, it's continuous. And it just shows that you need a lot of legal creativity just so that you can prove your case in court. So I think I have two lessons here. Number one, there's really a need to have a victim-centered approach. Why? Your victim's first need might not be even legal. It might be psychosocial. There's a need to have the safe house. There's a need to provide for the financial needs of your client. Next, there's a need to really choose the appropriate legal remedy. For example, an expert witness. Or for example, for the war against drugs, maybe our first impulse as lawyers is to file a criminal case against the perpetrators of the EJ case. But our own clients are actually wary of filing it because they really fear a real threat to their lives. So instead of filing a murder case, we told them we can actually file a writ of amparo. We have the rules. It's a writ, the rules on the writ of amparo. It's a South American writ which we imported in the Philippines. It's a writ to enforce if there's a threat or a real violation of your right to life, liberty, and security. So we told them we can actually file a writ of amparo. And when we filed it in last year, early of last year, lo and behold, in fact, even the Solicitor General actually conceded with us. They did not anymore oppose us. In essence, they actually appeared as a tribune of the people, and we filed it against the police chief and the commanders. And we actually had an agreement with the Solicitor General. There will be a radius, maybe a 10 kilometer or 1 kilometer radius to protect our clients. And the most unique directive of the Court of Appeals was that the war on drugs with respect to our clients is suspended. And we used that actually for another case. We filed 7 months down the road. We filed a class suit writ of amparo for a low-income community, but it's still pending in the Supreme Court.
And Eric, do you have a further contribution on the complications of dealing and running with cases in this area? I understand you've tried other cases as well.
Yeah, that's why it's important for lawyers like us to receive funding. So because without funding, then you can do work. When it comes to civil litigation, it costs money because there are fees to be paid, court fees, affidavits, etc., photocopying, etc. So criminal matters is a bit cheaper because there's no, less out-of-pocket costs, but it costs money to run an office. But the danger of beyond not receiving funding is that if you do a lot of public interest cases or human rights cases, even though if you do commercial cases, some clients expect you to do them for free.
Yes.
So they think that their divorce case is a human rights matter, and that I've been charged for corruption. So therefore, what about my human rights? So we tell them, look, this is not a human rights matter. You need to pay fees if you want us, to represent you. So clearly, there should be a bit more understanding from clients. Of course, if you can afford it to pay some money, then you should at least the disbursement, so that at least your basic costs are covered. But by and large, most of our clients are quite poor, from the poorer community, and so we can't really expect them to come up with anything. So most of the time, the firm or we are able to get funding from outside sources.
Thank you. And Mary, I'm interested in your experience with your clients, but from the perspective of perhaps being trauma survivors. So they may be suffering from PTSD, or as Gilbert mentioned, they may be in hiding or in a safe house, so they're in unusual circumstances for themselves. Does that affect your work with them, and have you developed strategies to work around that?
Talking about direct impact to the clients, we don't never call them clients because it never go into the court system. The complaints, the allegation, the testimonial was kept sort of not secret, but it's not been accepted by the public that
actually torture has been happened. So when we started to document it more systematically with methodology, with support from international organizations it started by the UN Voluntary Fund for Torture Victims 5 years ago. So we started to document it more professionally. So when we report that it's become an issue where human rights defenders like us and also the lawyer team being under threat and intimidations or being charged of maximum 5 year or 7 year imprisonment because of the false reporting, defamation, and computer crime acts. I actually have 4 minutes videos, and then I will explain more how is this cause. Actually, it's come out with a lot of tear of the family member of human rights defenders.
Thank you, Noi, for preparing that for us. Oh, is this you? Are you the pawn pen? Yeah. Great. Noi stars in this video.
For their hearing, to document their work and the persecution they're facing. Half an hour before the human rights defenders were set to hear their charges, Ponpen received a call from the niece of a murdered torture victim whose case she had been investigating. The niece reported that 8 policemen had come to her office with an arrest warrant related to her internet posting about her deceased uncle. They came to take her into custody. After making a report at the nearby police station, she'll be transferred by van to the police station in Narathiwat province, set to arrive by the next morning. The human rights defenders are now working on this new case on the way to the police station. The harassment by officials on victims in the South seems to have been extended to the families of those original victims. Families of alleged torture victims and local press came to support the 3 human rights defenders at Patani police station. The military says the human rights defenders' torture report is false and claims it has ruined the military's reputation unjustly. The Internal Security Command, Region 4, submitted complaints against the human rights defenders related to libel and the Computer Crime Act.
มันอยู่ที่เขาว่าเขาอยากจะทำงานเพื่อแก้ปัญหาจริงๆหรือเปล่าถ้ามาแก้ปัญหาจริงๆเขาก็ต้องร่วมมือกับผู้ปกครองว่าเอาข้อมูลไปแก้ไขไม่ใช่เอาข้อมูลมาแก้ตัว
กรมน.ภาค 4 ส่วนหน้านะครับได้รับการมอบหมายจากกรมน.ภาค 4 นะให้มีการแจ้งความดำเนินคดีนะครับสืบเนื่องจากทางที่สาธารณธรรมและก็ด้วยใจนะครับได้จัดทำรายงานสถานการณ์การละเมิดแล้วก็มีการทรมานการขอทรมานแล้วก็ได้มีการจัดเวทีเมื่อวันที่ 10 เดือนกุมภาพันธ์ใช่ไหมครับ2559นะครับข้อความในเอกสารทางเจ้าหน้าที่บอกว่าเป็นความเท็จ
หลายคนก็วิเคราะห์ว่ากระบวนการนี้เป็นวิธีการในการที่ต้องการย้ำไม่ให้กลุ่มองค์กรด้านสิทธิชนทำงานนะครับต้องการที่จะส่งสัญญาณไปให้กับคนที่เรียกว่าเป็นเหยื่อของการทรมานนะครับให้คล้ายๆว่ายังคิดในการที่จะให้ข้อมูลกับองค์กรต่างๆนะครับทั้งในประเทศและต่างประเทศ
คือถ้าเป็นชาวบ้านทุกคนก็จะรู้ว่าจะทำจริงๆแต่ไม่ใช่ว่ามาเขียนเอาอะไรที่บ้านส่วนใหญ่ที่ถามออกมาว่าทำจริงเลยไม่ใช่ตอนนี้เรามีหนี้สินถ้าจะเอาของตัวเองเดินทางไปติดต่อชาวบ้านเราไม่มีเงินในบ้านเขามาหาว่าพวกเราทำงานเพื่อหาเงินในเรื่องนี้ไม่ใช่
The activities of the human rights activists so far has been very useful for the whole process, the peace solutions, the political process to solve the problem, because they could help protect rights of the local communities, and they could monitor the activities of the the armed forces.
จะหยุดได้แล้วเพราะว่ามันเสี่ยงตัวเอง เราทำดีแต่ว่าเพื่อนเขาคิดว่าเราทำไม่ดีใช่ไหมล่ะใช่ไหมเราใจบริสุทธิ์ไม่ใช่ว่าทำเพื่อหวังยศถาบรรดาศักดิ์หรือเงินตราไม่หรือ
I hope the video have kept you some of the information about how we went through, and of course the family member, you can see the family mother and the sister is crying when the video was taping. Okay, so the charge actually dropped.
Congratulations.
Okay, so the military agreed to drop the complaints after a lot of lobbying from international funds, embassies, UN, because the project is supported by UN Voluntary Fund for Torture Victims. And we also get the emergency fund to prepare for the case before it's dropped about 1 year after. The case was dropped due to the ICCPL review. Thai government at that time was under military government. A lot of report is going in front of the member of the UN country, so they feel embarrassed and they wanted to put something nice. And luckily, that is the case that we are privileged to have the drop of the charge. But the issue is also around. Fetch back a little bit. My mom is the one who received the summons from the military. And it's just, during that time, it's military government. You see military on television all the time, and happened that the military officer wanted to take a photo of the summons, and someone received it and sent it to the bus. But my mom was not at home, but the neighbors in Bangkok have to receive the summons and taking photo with the military. And so it's a kind of thread along the way of how the case has been against human rights defenders. So my mom was worried, but anyway, we got a senior lawyer and also a friend supporting our work, so she trusts her daughter, so she felt okay, and throughout the situation, she also supported me. The decision to drop the charge, and actually we were thinking two things. One thing is that we knew that torture cases will not go to Thai court because we don't have the torture offense. It's very difficult to individual to launch a complaint to the police. So we were thinking that this case, even though we are defendant, is a channel to get all the cases into the court system to document everything. So at first we prepare for going to court as a defendant, but we wanted to use as a strategic litigation to get every testimony in the court systems. But when we, during 1 year time, we were thinking about more of the everyday risk to the victims of torture who is listed in the book, and also the paralegal who is interviewing the victim, because they speak local language, they speak Malay, I speak Thai. I have done a lot of interview, but the local paralegal has done their best to document all those cases. We only published 54, but actually we have now about 200 documentations of those cases. So we decided to agree with the military, not agree in anything, but to go with them with the press conference. Just showing off that they have dropped the complaints. But along the way, at least 4 people in the documentation that we publish and become the cause of this allegation from the military is they are now already in the prison. Because we have a suppressive law, we have martial law, people can be arrested without any charges or any oversight from anyone. Only military can go and arrest them and detain 7 days. We have emergency decree where they can prolonging their detention without any other oversight, including a lawyer for another 30 days. Another 84 days in detention in a prison where now, under the military government, we cannot go in and interview people anymore, including ICRC. So all of this has become an excuse for us to agree with the not going to court and then probably talking to the military about that. But again, that situation is not better. We decide not to publicize any cases anymore because of the threat to the victims. And also now after they cannot do anything to us in terms of threat for us to go to the court, they are now charging media, local media, who are reporting another case. They are now threatened to charge another torture victims. As I said before, the one that we have filed a lawsuit for him, and we have a Supreme Administrative Court decision to back him up. So I think at the end, this torture victim will not go to jail because he talked on his own case on television because we have a verdict for him. But that means if that torture victims who has a final decision from the court that he get compensation are not allowed to speak on public television, that means none of other victims of torture can speak because there is no evidence backing him up. So all of this has become my everyday life. We still have been threatened, but not physically, not judicial harassment, but cyber crime, cyber attack. You know the word cyber attack? We have a lot of information operation from our military. They have a best graphic designer who putting my face and other friends into a very, very nice, what you call, change, some animation, some real photo, but with the wording that they as the witch, you know. So I also get a lot of attack when there is an execution of the death penalty prisoner in June this year. A lot of cyber attack against those who say talking about anti-death penalty, and that's. And Mary, you mentioned that, so in the video and from what you were describing, there had been a charge that was issued against you. There was a warrant that was issued. Was that the first time you were charged for an offence? Okay, what was that experience like? Oh, yes, it was, I mean, at that time, if comparing to the other human rights defender in other contexts, like because the charge came after the coup d'etat. So during the first year, there's a lot of people being summoned by the military. So comparing to them, I'm a bit better because I will be entered into the criminal procedures, which I'm privileged to have lawyer. We privileged to have support in the police station. We were able to get international community to support us and go with us in the police stations. Mm-hmm. We have our documentations of what is happening, but many other human rights defenders at that time is facing much, much more greater threat to their life, their profession, including the friends of our friends, Anon, the lawyer, and many June, and many defenders are still under threat to military court in Thailand now. I'm a lucky one the charge has been dropped.
Yeah. And the personal costs, if we move into that area, for Gilbert and Eric, you will have different experiences of this as well. What Mary was talking about is she has been, there was an attempt to bring her through at least the criminal system, so there was some transparency at least about the charge, and it should follow due process to an extent. But what about the things that you can't see? So, for example, if you have restrictions on your passport that weren't there previously, or inexplicably as well. One of the delegates for the conference here was almost unable to get a visa from the Hong Kong government because they had clearly become aware of some previous activity, and it was a problem. And this was from quite some years ago as well. It wasn't just earlier this year. So these sorts of things seem to have ongoing repercussions. I don't know if in your profession in Thailand, if you are a practicing solicitor, in some jurisdictions you're not able to have criminal charges and retain your practicing certificate. So there are some professional implications as well. And I noticed in the video that you showed the military were alleging that essentially the army had been defamed, which is sort of the reverse of what's actually happening, of course, with the human rights defenders having to defend their own name. But Eric and Gilbert, do you have comments about the personal costs that can come, particularly in these cases where you're essentially bringing cases against the state?
I think in terms of personal costs, it's more of reputational, because in fact, if I'm being interviewed and then it's posted on YouTube. One time my wife actually read the messages, and she was so alarmed. So I just told her, don't read that, okay? Because it was saying there that I'm actually supported by drug lords, I'm funded by drug lords. I actually don't read the comments. Secondly, I was even tagged in a blog that I'm part of an opposition conspiracy. So there's really a concerted effort to cast human rights defenders as being pro-opposition or being destabilizers. In fact, we were called by the Solicitor General before an oral argument in the Supreme Court that we were destabilizers. So I think it's part of the reputational cost we have to do for human rights. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, when it comes to my experience, I think you need to distinguish lawyers who occasionally take up public interest cases than somebody like me, because I'm a lawyer but also a human rights activist. So my work is inside and outside of courtrooms, and even though I go to court, I defend clients, I file public interest litigation, but a lot of my troubles come from things outside of court. But of course, it follows from what I do in court too, right? Yeah, I've been arrested 5, 6, 7 times, so I've been stayed in various lockups at different police stations. I've stayed at the oldest prison in Malaysia before it was demolished. So if you go to Bukit Bintang in Kuala Lumpur, there's a Pudu prison. So I stayed a night there. So, but overall, because of who I am as a lawyer, rather prominent in Malaysia. So I'm not treated badly, and the police are normally they're quite nice to me. Some even tell me, Mr. Eric, can you please slow down? We cannot be, we can't be arresting you all the time. And there's one time I even asked for the same cell. So it was kind of funny because they wanted me to put me in one particular cell. I said, look, it's very noisy here. Can I go upstairs? There's a private cell. So they were pretty nice to me, but overall the conditions of detention were not great because I'm still subjected to all the rules and regulation like a normal detainee. So, so food is terrible. There's no water all the time. You can ask for permission to have a glass of water. Food you wouldn't even serve to your cat or dogs, but you're forced to eat it because you're hungry, right? And the lights are on 24 hours, so you don't know what time is. There's no window, so you don't know whether it's day or night, so you get disorientated. But for me, it's just part of the struggle, and I have the support of friends and fellow lawyers. So, like I said, for an ordinary person, it'd be very frightening. But for me and my colleagues, it comes with the territory. So, when you do this sort of a job, you more or less expect at some point it's going to come, right? So you try to prepare yourself. But like I said, I have the support. So I have colleagues who are very senior lawyers, and I have counsel who will be able to assist me, right? So I have one charge was fully, went to full trial. It's kind of silly because, me and a few other lawyers and civil society, we organized a Human Rights Day walk. This is back in 2007. It's very silly. So it was a peaceful walk. We're just walking peacefully, right? And the reason we did it because the government was putting a lot of pressure on civil society not to protest, because there was a series of protests during the months from beginning of the year, and there were large protests that went on. And then on Human Rights Day, the Malaysian Bar was supposed to organize a Human Rights Day walk, but because there was pressure on the Malaysian Bar thought that, look, it's too much of pressure for them not to walk, not to protest. They decided to hold their event indoors. So me and my colleagues thought that, look, this is wrong. You can't cave, under pressure. So we decided to organize our own walk. So we decided to walk, and less than 100 meters, we were stopped by the police, and we were arrested for rioting. But so we went for full trial, but luckily we had a good judge, and all of us were acquitted. They didn't appeal. So that's one charge back in 2007. But more interestingly was the last few years, when the Najib administration, the previous government, was under a lot of pressure. You must understand the context in Malaysia. The whole apparatus of the government is working hand in glove. The Public Prosecutor's Office, the police force, and especially the Inspector General of Police. So these are all government appointed, and the well-being and the political support of the government relies on the support of the police. So it's vice versa. The police protects the government protects the police. And in Malaysia, the mainstream media is something that the government has always had control, because they own the press by proxy or through direct ownership. But the internet, the online media, and social media is beyond their control. So as far as the social media is concerned, it is mainly people who has a voice, who are able to dissent. This is where they are not able to control. So consequently, the government cracked down a lot on social media users. If you follow me on Twitter, you know that I have a lot of things to say, and I'm an avid user of Twitter, and I'm also a commentator. So I say a lot of things, and consequently, through my tweets, I've lost several mobile phones. Yes. They just come and grab my mobile phone and...
as in literally grab them out of your hands?
Yeah, they come and... as in they'll arrest me, and then this mobile phone is a piece of evidence. They need to send it for forensic for them to verify whether this tweet came from my mobile phone. But look, I told them, look, this is... I said it. So I told them, look, you don't have to take my mobile phone. I admit this is my tweet, But I think the whole idea is to harass you. You take away your mobile phone, then all your contacts inside, and then you need to buy a new mobile phone, etc. So I've been charged for sedition for a tweet. But like I said, it's more than just the charges, because I'm sorry for taking a bit of a time. For the sedition charge, it was very convenient to amplify the matter, because I'm a non-Muslim, I'm a non-Malay, and in Malaysia, it's race and politics is a very big issue. So if you're a non-Muslim, non-Malay, seen to be challenging the status quo, then it's very convenient for the authorities to actually spin that, look, you are challenging, you don't know your place. So it became very difficult for a while, for a couple of weeks. The mainstream press was writing like page 1, page 2, page 3, broad shit, all about me. And then a lot of comments about me from I'm talking about especially the Malay press. So it was a bit difficult at the time, because the tide was overwhelming. There were death threats, messages sent to me, but like I said, I had the support system, and then consequently there's a new Malaysia, because of, like I said, all the challenges that we have filed, on challenging the constitutionality of the Sedition Act, etc. The trial never proceeded, but now there's a new Malaysia, and the charge was eventually withdrawn. So I'm free to come here now. So.
Yes, although we did see some online articles, they are still there. And for people that don't know you personally, people do make up their mind about what they read. A lot of people are very influenced by the media, and it's definitely a cost of working in this area where you are having to defend your name, your reputation and your work and set something right. And it's quite difficult once that information is out. It's like grains of sand that can't quite be collected up and made whole again. And Eric, you described when you were detained, you had the support even of individual police officers. But what about the other side of the work that we do? So if you are a human rights defender, you know rights on your side. If you're acting for often a clear injustice, and people will support that. But what about if it's for an unpopular cause? So for example, if you're defending a perpetrator and no one wants to see the perpetrator exonerated or have the charges dropped, everyone wants to see justice. Have any of you been in that situation where you are acting for an unpopular cause, or something that causes friends to stop talking to you, or media articles that defame you, or certainly express vitriol about the work that you're doing?
Probably for me, I also want to touch upon some of the gender aspects of human rights defenders as well. Because I'm as a woman activist, and so who are we confronting in my everyday work in the Deep South is men-dominated military, no? So a lot of things to do with, you looking good today, you're a little bit chubby today, all of this has come every day, I mean, if we have to meet them. And the situation of attack to human rights defenders is in various situations. And the things that happening to me as a Bangkok activist is uncomparable to the local activists in the field. Often they would ask me, are you Thai? Thai. I say, yes. Are you Buddhist? I say, yes, I can. Namo tassa bhagavato. I was doing that to them because I wanted to say, I'm a Buddhist, I'm from Bangkok, I'm working here, counting on you to be more accountable to what you are doing with our Muslim minority in our country, and it has gone so bad. We have 7,000 people die in this conflict, 10,000 people injured. And all of this was coming directly to me through personal conversations, Facebook, Messenger, and a lot of time my friends would just say, oh, you look really scary in the public space. I say, okay, but they're still having dinner, lunch, and going out for movie with me anyway. So I think being Thai Buddhist in a conflict area where majority of the victims of violation from Thai state are Muslim, I remain myself as a Buddhist. I never wear a headscarf. I never pretend I'm Muslims to go into the community, and I tell things frankly to military. I'm Buddhist. I wanted to talk to you as we are Thai. So what do we have to do with this situation? So that what I'm coming around that situation.
And Gilbert, I'm curious in your particular situation. I think there are 24 lawyers that have lost their lives in the last 2 years.
30.
Okay, 30. Do you worry about that? Do you ever think that maybe I need to do something else?
Yeah, in fact, one lawyer was killed in my own province about a week ago or 2 weeks ago. In fact, I just tell my wife, they're going to waste one bullet for me. Why should they do it? They'll just make me a hero. And your earlier question, Lisa, I think going against the war on drugs is unpopular in itself. Remember, President Duterte was elected in a platform that is going to kill drug suspects. In fact, he has been famous already, not just in the region, but in the whole world. In fact, at some point, President Widodo of Indonesia wanted to adopt the war on drugs in Indonesia. Secondly, it's actually so paradoxical that you can actually have gross human rights population in an era of democratic governance. Why? Because he thought that with 16 million Filipinos voting for him, it's as if he actually has a blank check to do anything, like extrajudicial killings.
And with the support of the church initially? Less so now?
Not really, but it's more of individual bishops. But I think the church the Catholic Church has been very vocal about going against extrajudicial killings. In fact, in the San Andres community, it was actually the nuns who introduced us to the community, because it's actually the nuns who are really connected with the community as opposed to the priests. They just really wait in the parish churches. It's really the nuns who connected us. And we're actually using the trust that they have built with the community to also get the trust of the community. And it's so ironic. In fact, some of our clients, they're even pro-Duterte. They're even pro-administration. That's why we have to state in our prefatory statement, in our petition, that this is not against the president. This is just for human rights and the rule of law.
I want to now open to the room. Does anyone have any questions to our panelists about their personal experiences or their views on being a human rights defender? Go ahead.
Okay. From my experience, once you get involved into the human rights interventions, they expect you to stand up for every abuse that arises in the community. Time and again, there has been cases where some are actually unattended to, and the critics come out that probably you two are getting selective, and at the same time, sometimes the critics kind of connect that to monetary motivation and funding issues. How do you guys deal with that?
Actually, in a sense, we have to be selective. It's true that everyone wants to take up their case of extrajudicial killings. In fact, we're exhausted. We cannot really take up all the cases. So we're really forced to choose a strategic case that will stop everything. That's why we filed a class suit writ of amparo before the Supreme Court. And in essence, it also assails the constitutionality itself on the war on drugs. So that somehow, if we can have a favorable decision from the Supreme Court, then it will affect everyone. In fact,